My name is Marc Steiner, and I have been host of the Marc Steiner Show since March of 1993, and have a production company called the Center for Emerging Media. We do documentaries and town meetings and expanding into new worlds over the next year, and well, I guess that's who I am. That's a tough one. It's tough because it can mean so many things, you know. When we talk about political leadership, let's say, I think that we're lacking real political leadership in this country and in the city and in the state, because everyone is so worried and preoccupied with defending their own territory, with their own personal political survival, that people aren't offering the leadership we need. In other words, let's say if we were serious about global warming, let's say, and what just happened in Copenhagen, then leadership would be telling, whatever leadership is, would be being frank with the people of this country and the planet about the dire conditions that we face and that our future faces and that we're leaving for our children. And we're not doing that. We're not saying what it would really take, what it would really mean to alter the future of the planet. It would mean altering the way we live our lives. It would mean changing things so drastically that it would take a inspiring leadership, an inspiring movement to make people want to be part of that. And we're not doing that. I mean, you know, if I asked a friend the other night, and who is a benefactor of ours in terms of he helps support our work, and he ran a hedge fund for a long time, and I have my own issues with what hedge funds have done to us and the planet, but he's a decent human being, a really good human being. And I said, why is it that nobody can invest in solar energy, wind power, alternative energy systems? Nobody wants to put their money there. They're not growing. And why is that? He said, because oil is cheap. Well, leadership should be saying to us that if we want to begin to save the planet and the people on it, if we care about poor people in the developing world, if we care about our own communities and the survival of those communities, both in terms of its environment and our health and our lives and our future, then we have to change. If the change means that oil has to be expensive, then you got to tax oil, and you got to tax carbon, and what it means to tax, and the people who want to do that also are not being honest by saying it would be onerous for us to tax carbon. It would change the way we live. It would change how we have to live our daily lives and work, and we have to be prepared to go through this very tough time to get to the next place. Nobody's saying that and inspiring people to think about that. I mean, most human beings would be inspired to do something if they understood what it meant for their children, because we are inspired by our children. You know, as individuals, our children are our lives. And so if you say to my 12-year-old or my 40-year-old that I'm working to make the world safe for you, then I'll make sacrifices for that. But to make sacrifices, you have to have the leadership to inspire us to do that. And we have to inspire our leadership to be strong enough to do that. And right now, that's happening. I'm not saying it won't. I mean, the most inspiring thing to me that I saw in Copenhagen was the 100,000 people that came there outside the conference, that came from nations across Africa and Asia and Latin America and Europe and North America, who were black, white, Asian, Latino, men, women, gay, straight, college-educated, farmers from India, Kenya, who were fighting for the future of the planet together. That's never happened before. They weren't running amok through the streets breaking windows. They were actually there to try to create something, moving for change. That's the kind of stuff that, to me, is inspiring more than a person is inspiring. You know, I think about what inspired. I was talking to some people in the Gaza and Palestine the other day, in the West Bank, and people in Israel proper. And the press isn't covering this, but there are going to be 50,000 Palestinians and a few thousand other people from around the world marching from Gaza City to the border of Israel where the wall is, to keep the Palestinian Gazans out of Israel and vice versa. In a non-violent march, not people wrapped in bombs to blow up buses in Jerusalem, but 50,000 Palestinians marching with a commitment to nonviolence to change the course of that struggle for humanity over there. And that, to me, is leadership and inspiring. When I see people in our own inner cities here in Baltimore who are sacrificing their lives to turn their communities around and save their children and to really rebuild this community, that to me is inspiring. What's inspiring to me is not necessarily Barack Obama. What's inspiring to me in our communities here in Baltimore, let's say, is a thug who's turned to peace. There's nothing more powerful on the planet than a thug who has turned to peace and is looking to reach out with his or her powerful arms and heart and wrap them around the children of the inner cities and saying, you know, we can do this socially and politically and humanly and at an individual level. We can make it work. That to me is inspiration, and those are the things that our business does not cover. One of the things that I've come to over the years now is that I don't think there are either ors. I don't think it's one thing or another. I think life is too complex for all that. I think it's all those things and how they meld together in their own political, spiritual, cultural dialectic. It's how things feed into one another and make the world work. It's Mobius. Life is like a Mobius, you know. And so that King didn't create the movement. The movement created King, and the synergy created the civil rights movement that fought to break the back of segregation. And so King, on one level, King's death, I don't think King's death really ended anything. I think that stage of the movement then was already changing. I mean, I remember very well the day that King was killed. I remember a few years before exactly where I was when Malcolm X was assassinated, and I took the Greyhound bus to New York and stood in line to pay my respects to Malcolm in Harlem when I was a kid. I was 19, I think, and I know where I was when John Kennedy was killed. I know where I was when Bobby Kennedy was killed. I know where I was when Martin Luther King was killed, and they were all something that affected my generation in a very deep way. But leaders are important because they embody and they express a feeling and power of a moment, and they become very important for that. But their death doesn't end things all the time. It changes things, clearly. You know, and I think that we don't have, I don't know who that person is right now in our world. I don't know if we have them. People instilled in their minds what they wanted Barack Obama to be. You know, his campaign of hope, there was such a vacuum that was filled by people's desires for a different kind of world, and they put that in Barack Obama, partially because, you know, he was so eloquent, partially because he was African American, and all of our history and all of our desires kind of tumbled into this one man running for president of the United States of America as a Democrat. And so the American people were inspired themselves, but didn't realize that they became inspired through Barack Obama instead of being inspired by themselves. And it took reams of people of color and poor people and students and others to go out and really push Barack Obama over the top. And that's what happened. But nothing is pushing Barack Obama right now. I mean, I said before we started this, you know, that and I maybe misspoke saying I was disappointed. I'm not disappointed in Barack Obama because I never had great expectations to start with. I had great expectations of the force that pushed him into office. I mean, look right now. Let's take healthcare, for example. Lobbyists this year have spent $3.3 billion in Washington, D.C. $3.3 billion. 179 former congressmen and their staffers are now paid by the healthcare industry to lobby Congress. They spend $1 to $3 million a day lobbying healthcare in Congress. There are 6 healthcare lobbyists for every congressman. So they have manipulated this whole effort that we're seeing right now. The other part is that 56% of the people in the latest Quinnipiac poll said they support a public option. 63% of the American people said in that same poll they like to see Medicare expanded for people who are younger. 56% of the people in that poll said that they do not like what Congress, the health care bill in Congress. So what that says to me is that there's a potential for change in this country because people really want something different and better. And it's not being represented by the people in Congress, for the majority of them anyway. And it's not being represented right now by President Obama's administration. So things are our future is just beginning to tumble out. I mean, we're going through I think we're in a period of massive change when maybe people who are 10 to 15-year-olds now are, in 50 years, look back at this time. They're going to see this is one of those historical moments when the great things began to change and we're just kind of redefining the world.